guitar player slash bass player, and this is long before you got to see the band, but we actually had somebody who would spell Bob on guitar, and Bob would spell him on bass. And so we kept it kind of interesting where, we would switch back and forth during the set and be able to do different kinds of music from each of their repertoire. But we've settled down to the idea of, hey, that kind of versatility, not really necessary. That guy lasted, about a year and a half or so. Decided it wasn't for him. He didn't want to continue. And so we've gone through a couple of bass players till we landed on Don Thompson now, who's been with us for, I think, about almost 5 years now. And he's filled in really, really well. He's kind of fit nicely into the mix and brought his own unique style and interest. Almost an underappreciated guy because he doesn't sing as much lead as Bob and I do. But he sure does add a whole lot to the mix of what he does, and the way he handles backup vocals and those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 3 of you, so he's a valuable member of the team. So the song that we use is an original song, but not by you guys. It was by another group?
Actually, to explain that, I need to go back to that third person that we had initially. His name was Mike Rincuso. And Mike was actually always pretty much just a guitar player. He had a lower register in his voice. I'd say he was kind of different in that way from Bob and I. And so that filled out our vocals kind of nicely because, Bob and I are both tenors. But Mike and I and his cousin Chuck actually were going through the ideas of writing an album just for our own benefit. And we had this project in mind, and we were in the process of just playing some things that Mike had written, that Chuck had fooled around with, and we sort of fell into this jam one day. And I said, wait, stop, after about 2 or 3 minutes. I said, let me turn on the cassette deck. Anybody remember those? This is a long time ago now. And I grabbed this little cassette recorder, and I said, let me record just a little bit of what you guys are doing. And they looked at me kind of funny, and I said, no, think about this. This is how songs get written. And then they caught on to what I was saying. So we had the basic riff for Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and they said, well, Mr. Smarty Pants, if you think this is a song, write some lyrics to it. So I had Mike actually make me kind of a scratch track of the guitar part that I could sit at my desk and just sort of listen to over and over, and I started to think about what I wanted to do. And in my head, at that time, I was rereading the Douglas Adams trilogy, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I was on the book Restaurant at the End of the Universe. And I thought, there's a little bit of a silliness to this riff. There's a little bit of Frank Zappa to it. And I let my imagination run with that. And instead of trying to write something wholly from scratch, I did use the idea of that Douglas Adams had written about, of a restaurant that exists at the edge of time and slips over the edge of time every night, so you can watch the entire universe explode and implode and just go away, and then they drag the restaurant back across time, and it repeats every night. And it's quite the show, and everybody in the universe eventually wants to get there and actually get to see that and all the bizarre things that exist in that place. So we kind of went at it from the idea that it was a bit of a Frank Zappa type of song with a little bit of silliness to it that should make you giggle a little bit, but is also quite danceable and has a nice hook. And it's a fun little piece. And I've noticed over the last couple of years that we've been doing it, and I should say this too, Joe, I had been chiding Bob in Gumband for a long time to write some songs and for us to do some original material. And finally, one day I just said, I don't know when you're going to get around to it. We're just going to do this. And he said, okay. And I tossed it in front of him, and he said, I like it. And I said, okay. So we reworked it a little bit to fit for a live performance, make it a little smoother in a couple of ways. And we've been doing it ever since. It's been part of the set list, and people seem to really like it. And that also got Bob's juices flowing. So now we have about 5 of his original pieces that we do, and you've heard them, that we do live now. So that's kind of the history of that one little song in particular.
Very cool. I have a confession. I've never read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, so I have no idea what that reference is. But I've heard that's like one of the greatest things ever. So I need to get around to reading that.
They did a movie on the first book, which was a fair treatment of the first book. It was okay, but as with most things, the writing of the books themselves, I would say to anybody who's never read them, reading the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy itself is really one of the funniest experiences you could have. If you've got a sense of irony and satire, it would help you to know that Douglas Adams, I'm a real aficionado of the book. He was actually hitchhiking himself. I think it was in Ireland or might have been the northern spots of England. I'm not sure which. But he stopped at a pub and he got really drunk. And when he left, he literally passed out in a field face up, staring at the stars. And he started to think about, him being a hitchhiker and what was, helping him survive on his, his stomping around the grounds of again, it was either Ireland or England. I'm pretty sure it was England, but he started to think about all those things and then imagining that there was a space force coming to destroy the Earth to make room for a highway project, as we see that happens all the time on Earth. Your local works department decides to regrade a road and destroy a village and run a highway through it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he wrote it based on the bureaucracies that happen and those kinds of things. And wouldn't it be interesting if that actually happened on a galactic level, and the Earth was actually one of those villages that was just sort of in the way? And it may not sound funny, considering the potential to just destroy the Earth completely, but it's actually very funny and very very interesting reading, I think.
Very cool. So if anybody wants to check you guys out, I highly recommend seeing you guys live. Go to thegumband.com and click on schedule, and people can see when you guys are playing next. Looks like you're playing January 11th down in Finleyville, huh?
That's the next gig. Right now we're starting to book into next year. We don't have a whole lot on the schedule yet. Just a few pieces here and there, but that's typical for this time of year. The club owners are all distracted by the end of the year and New Year's, so over the next couple of weeks we'll probably see some things filling in. But that's the next gig at Roy's by the Tracks, January 11th. It's a Friday night. It's a neat little place. Anybody in that vicinity wants to pop in, it would be great to see you. We'll dedicate Restaurant if you're there. If you come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to hear Restaurant at the End of the Universe," tell me your name and we'll dedicate it to you. So
awesome. All right, Fred Olaharski, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thanks, Joe. It was great to be a part of it. We'll see you later.
All right, I'll see you. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow to preview the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Thanks again to Adam and Derek from the Pulse Podcast Network and Fred from Gumband. Talk to you later. Another episode is in the bag.